I distinctly remember getting in a whole lot of trouble in seventh grade when the vice principal walked into my classroom unexpectedly. Now, we had a substitute teacher that day, which in my mind meant all the rules and common decency went out the window. This meant rather than being engaged in my history work, I was engaged in a crayon war that consisted of launching crayons across the classroom at my friend. Now, the only problem was that literally as my arm was winding up for this all-important crayon launch, the vice principal walked into my classroom. My arm had so much momentum going forward, I couldn't stop, and he saw the whole thing. Well, this meant a trip to the principal's office. When he was questioning me as to what happened and why I did it, in an act of utter responsibility and accountability, I completely put the blame on my friend, who of course was at fault because he first launched the crayons at me. Well, needless to say, this didn't get me out of trouble, no matter how much I tried to put the blame elsewhere. Today in Luke 23, we see Jesus doing the opposite of what I did. Rather than putting the blame on someone else who didn't deserve it, he put the blame on himself for someone who did deserve it. So let's dive in. Luke 23, verses 23 and 24. But with loud shouts, they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. Now we know from elsewhere in Luke and other Gospels that the man who went free, even though he was guilty of murder and insurrection, was named Barabbas. And even though it was guilty Barabbas who was the one who should have gone to that cross, it was innocent Jesus that took his place. Now, the name Barabbas means son of the Father. And so here we have one son of the Father, Jesus, taking the place of another son of the Father, Barabbas. And here's one other thing to consider. Later on in this chapter, we read that Jesus was crucified between two thieves. But who is that third cross originally meant for? Was it possible that it was actually meant for Barabbas before he went free on Jesus' account? Well, we don't know for sure, but we do know that Jesus' willingness to stay quiet and take the blame was the vehicle in which Barabbas went free. Barabbas wasn't the only one who went free. You and I did too. Because rather than trying to place the blame on others, like my seventh grade self, Jesus took the blame. Not only should this produce immense gratitude within us, it should also strengthen us when we feel under attack or accused to remember we don't necessarily have to vehemently defend ourselves, as Jesus has ultimately vindicated us by taking the blame for us. Jesus masterfully orchestrated this situation, not through his words, but through his silence. So I want to leave you with this question. What aspect of your life would you benefit from emulating Jesus' example to grasp your ultimate vindication and therefore to respond with fewer words rather than more words?